Want to hear a secret? This image that I shot of Messier 81 represents 24.25 hours of integration. 20 hours of that were shot on dark nights using a mono camera and LRGB filters. And 4.25 hours of that were shot on a night of a full moon using an HA filter. But that's not the secret, that's just the specs. The secret is, I know a better way to add HA to an image. Now, if you're developing your images with software like PixInsight or Cyril, probably like most people, you're doing this with mask and pixel math and trying to tweak those sliders and numbers just right and trying iteration after iteration to get that image that you're looking for. Because adding HA to an image is tricky, right? Well, it doesn't have to be. And if it's something you've wrestled with in the past, I'm going to save you a lot of trouble going forward, because I've devised a much better way to do this. You just have to get outside of the PixInsight box and move into layer-based photo editing. It is just so superior, and it's necessary to do this. PixInsight helps, but you're going to need to do layer-based photo editing for this. And if you're a Photoshop user, that'll work. If you're a GIMP user, it'll probably work. It has been ages since I've used GIMP, so I'm not up on what all of its current features are, but I hear it's pretty good, pretty powerful. And definitely, if you're an Affinity Photo user, you can do this because I've used Affinity Photo since there was an Affinity Photo, and it is perpetually my photo editor of choice, having those rare, wonderful features of being both exceedingly affordable and exceedingly powerful. So let's go ahead and jump in. I've just finished rendering last night's 4¼ hours of HA on M81 shot during the full moon, and now I'm opening the master in PixInsight. I'll get rid of this weighted exposure here, and we'll work with the primary exposure. I'll hit Ctrl-A to activate the screen transfer function, and we can see what's there. It doesn't look like much, but it's more than enough. As per my standard development procedure, I'm going to begin by running Blur Exterminator on it twice, first in the correct mode to correct any possible stellar aberrations, and then in the default mode to deconvolve the stars and sharpen everything. That's going to take a couple minutes, so I'm just going to skip past that. Now that the Blur Exterminator has done its job, I'll open the image of Messier 81 that I have already made from the previous 20 hours of integration shot during dark nights using LRGB filters. And I'm going to open the full resolution TIFF file of Messier 81. Now the next step is essential. I'm going to open the star alignment tool and set the LRGB image as the reference image, and then star align the HA image to it. The HA image has its cumbersome default name, so I'm going to rename the tab HA. Then I'll drag the tab into the target images box and run star alignment. The next thing is to apply a histogram transformation to the HA image. In this case, I'm just going to use the screen transfer function to apply the histogram transformation. It's a strong and contrasty tool, but for our purposes of creating a strong and beautiful HA overlay, it's going to be about perfect. I'll open the screen transfer function in the histogram transformation tool, select the image, then drag the action icon from the screen transfer function tool to the histogram transformation tool, and then drag the action icon from the histogram transformation tool onto the image. Now right now the image is white because it's showing both the screen transfer function and the histogram transformations function. So I'll hit Ctrl F12 to turn off the screen transfer function's temporary histogram stretch, which will reveal the HA information with its new permanent histogram stretch, which was based on the screen transfer function. Kind of a roundabout way of doing things, isn't it? A little confusing, but you get used to it. Now that the histogram has been stretched, I can run Noise Exterminator on it. It's important not to run Noise Exterminator till after the histogram is stretched, otherwise you will get artifacts. We'll just skip through the Noise Exterminator's processing. Now we tend to visualize HA as red, so I'm going to open the color combination tool, turn off the green and the blue channels, and drag the HA tab into the red channel. Then I'll run the tool, and this will generate a pure red colored version of the HA information. Now I'll save our red HA image as a 16-bit lossless TIFF. Then we'll open up our layer-based photo editor for the other half of this editing process. In Affinity Photo, the first thing I'm going to do is drag in our color image. I'll drag in the highest res version that I have, the 16 bits lossless TIFF. I'll give that layer a name, M81, and the last date that I collected the information to remind me which version I'm working with. Then I'll drag in the prepared image with our HA information. With the snap tool turned on, the HA image snaps promptly and perfectly into place. I will then duplicate the base layer and make it invisible. It will serve as a backup in case I need that original information. And now we'll work with the HA information and the duplicate layer of the LRGB image. Now we're going to execute the key parts of this technique for adding HA information. We're going to fully frequency separate the HA image. Frequency separation will divide the HA image into its high and low frequency components. The low frequency component contains color and brightness information, and the high frequency component contains detail information. For this technique, we will not need the low frequency component. You can make it invisible or delete it. Now this technique leaves us with only the high frequency information, the fine detail which portrays structures such as the nebulae within another galaxy. And because we ran it through the channel combination tool in PixInsight, thereby making it red, all that high frequency information is red. And to add that lovely HA information, all we have to do is composite it to the image. Just select a composite mode. The default composite mode is linear light, and that works well for very bright, information-rich photographs taken of subjects on Earth, because that environment is light-rich. But it often doesn't work well when applying additional high-frequency information to astrophotography. Sometimes you need other composite modes, and sometimes you just need to work with the information differently. This is because every image has its own unique qualities and characteristics, and therefore requires its own unique and thought-out workflow. After we finish going over the demonstration of this technique with the information from the M81 galaxy, we'll then apply the same technique to the M82 galaxy, which is a galaxy with very different visual characteristics, and therefore the application of the technique benefits from a different approach. But you now know the crucial fundamentals for quickly and easily adding HA information to any image. Just shoot your HA image, sharpen it, star align it, histogram stretch it, denoise it, and then apply red or any other desired color to it. And then bring it over to your layer-based photo editor with the color image that you want to work with, and frequency separate the HA information. From there, it's just a matter of compositing the high-frequency information to your color image. Let's go ahead and develop out this HA information to make the most of it on our color image of the M81 galaxy. The fine detail and color of the high-frequency layer is now being composited to the LRGB layer by way of the powerful default linear light composite mode, but its effect is still subtle. We need to strengthen it. And I'm going to strengthen it by duplicating the layer. This will simply add high-frequency information to high-frequency information. Notice with each duplicate, the color and detail in the nebulous regions becomes stronger. But there are some problems. The linear light composite mode has an overstrong effect in bright and dark areas. Hence, the black regions of space have become crunchy, and the core of the galaxy, which is the brightest, has become blown out. But that's a small problem. We'll deal with it later. Now I'm going to turn off or make invisible all the other layers, and select Merge Visible to create a single super high frequency layer. When the layer is made, I'm going to name it HF Softlight. Then I'll also make the HF Softlight layer invisible and select Merge Layer again to create another super high frequency layer. And I'll name that layer HF Linear Light. Now I no longer need the high frequency duplicate, so I'll get rid of 2 of them. Then drag the remaining HF layer beneath the LRGB duplicate layer, along with one of the high frequency layers. Then I'm going to group the high frequency layer, the low frequency layer, and the original LRGB layer together and turn that group off. That way, they'll no longer be visible. We no longer need them for the developing process. Their job is done. Now, let's add our prepared high-frequency information to our LRGB image of the galaxy. All I have to do is turn those 2 layers on and set their composite modes. Naturally, the linear light layer will get the linear light composite mode, and the soft light layer will get the soft light composite mode. Now, we need to clean up that crunchy space and overbright core. It is the linear light's high-frequency layer that is causing this. Like I said earlier, linear light is a very strong composite mode. Its purpose is to add high-frequency information to low-frequency information, so it tends to emphasize the contrast of high-frequency information. But in places of an image that are very bright or very dark, that can end up with undesirable effects. I could use tools like the luminosity mask to remove it, but why make things needlessly complicated? I'll just open an ordinary mask in the high-frequency linear light layer, then select the paintbrush tool in the color black, and then, with the mask selected, paint over the space and the very bright core of the galaxy. Painting black on a white mask will block the information coming from the layer the mask is attached to. It works rather like erasure in that sense, with the advantage that it's reversible. For this task, I have the opacity and flow of the paintbrush set for 100%, which gives a strong and efficient erase effect, but I have the hardness set to 0, which makes for a brush with very fine edges. And this way there are no sharply defined areas between the linear light high frequency layer and the other layers. And as you saw, I've also erased out that red from the upper and right edges of the image. That's just high frequency residue, so we don't have to crop that out. Removing this just removes residual red color from the edges of the high frequency plate, meaning that removing that information does not have any deleterious effect on the LRGB image below. I'm sure you have noticed that some red remains on the upper and right side even after erasure. That comes from the soft light high frequency layer, and we'll get rid of that shortly. I'll just finish painting out the linear light high frequency layer's effect in the dark space around the galaxy. This immediately gets rid of the crunchiness in the space around the galaxy. Now I'm going to set both the opacity and flow of the paintbrush to 20, because we need a more delicate touch in the core. We want to remove some of the high-frequency linear light info from the core of the galaxy, which is causing the core to look burned out. And yet, we need to be very careful not to remove the high-frequency information from immediately around the core. That's what gives us that wonderful sharpness and color. But for all that, it's really not that difficult. Lowering the brush's opacity allows us to remove that information one stroke at a time. Only 20% of the 20% flow will be lifted each time. I must depress the left mouse button to conduct each new stroke, which keeps the process from going too fast and being too brutal. While doing this part of the process, I want to make sure I only see the effects of the linear light high frequency layer on the color image, so I've turned off the soft light high frequency layer. When done with erasure, I'll select the white color, make the brush a little smaller, and brush over the cloud structure immediately around the core. And this will restore any high-frequency information I may have accidentally removed from those areas, while erasing the linear light effect out from the core. When that's done, I'll turn on the soft light high-frequency layer again. The soft light composite mode adds high-frequency information more gently. Therefore, it does not need the careful treatment that the linear light layer did. But you may be wondering why add the soft light layer at all. Using the soft light layer allows me to get a little more of the high frequency information around the galaxy into the dark space, further enhancing sharpness and color out in those areas. And the soft light high frequency layer's gentler soft light composite mode helps to spread around the sharper, starker information from the linear light composited linear light high frequency layer a little better. Now I'm going to finish getting rid of the trace of that high frequency mask around the upper and right edges of the image. We're still getting some residual from the soft light high frequency layer. So I've opened up a mask in the soft light high frequency layer, the paintbrush in the black color, and I'll just paint around the edges of the image. In seconds, that problem is removed. Now I'm going to improve the sharpness of the image by adding synergistic sharpening to both the soft light and the linear light high frequency layers. I've covered how to do this in many previous videos, but I'll give a quick recap of the process here. In each high frequency layer, open an unsharp mask and sharpen till the image looks good. Then place the clarity tool above it and sharpen till it looks good. Then open the high pass filter, place it above the clarity tool and sharpen till it looks good. Each of these tools sharpens to somewhat different parameters, and combining them in this way allows them to build their strengths on top of each other. Then we're going to enrich the color by opening a vibrance tool in each of the high frequency layers and increasing the saturation till the red color in both high frequency layers is popping a little more. I like a more natural look. I don't like to go for the ultra saturated colors that I see in so much astrophotography these days, but still, I think it'll benefit this image to intensify the color a little. There are only a couple last touch-ups to do. Affinity Photo's sharpening tools can make darker space a bit crunchy, especially right near the edges of an image. To address this, I'll just select each of the sharpening layers from both high frequency layers. Once again, select the paintbrush and the color black, and paint over the edges of the image and the darker space. And this will remove the effects of the sharpening tools from those areas. If you select the tool and paint over the image in black, it will remove the effect of that tool in that area. And that's exactly what we're doing here. The very last thing I'm going to do is open the channel mixer tool. The channel mixer tool can be used to control the intensity of each primary color that appears within an image. And unlike the curves tool, it works across the entire brightness range of that color. Now I want to further enhance the red throughout the entire image. So I'll place the channel mixer tool layer at the very top of the layer stack. Select the red channel, and then draw down its green 3%. Extracting the green from the red channel will intensify the reds. And that's how we take this HA information, give it color, and add it to this LRGB image, turning this into this. Now we're going to use the same technique to apply HA information to another image of the nearby galaxy Messier 82. The image as you see it right now represents 1800 minutes of LRGB integration captured over 6 moonless nights. 2 nights ago during the full moon, I was able to capture 7 hours and 10 minutes after calling of HA information. Apart from that bloody full moon, it was actually one of the best nights I've ever experienced. Calling only removed 3 subs. It was that good a night. Now I'm not going to walk you through the PixInsight preparation of the image again. It was done exactly as you already saw. I stacked the information using PixInsight's weighted batch script, and then developed the information in the exact same way that you saw me develop the HA information for Messier 81, with one difference. We already have very good information on the central structure of Messier 82. And what we want to develop out is the gas erupting out of Messier 82's galactic north and south. The problem is that gas is exceedingly dim. In fact, if you've ever imaged this galaxy for just one night, even with a wide aperture telescope such as an SCT, then you've seen how difficult it is to reveal it. It took 6 nights of imaging using LRGB to get the gas to be revealed this much, and I live at a dark sky site where the border is between 1 and 2. Those erupting gas structures are very dim. So my development goal for this iteration of this image is not to reveal any more of the central structure of the galaxy. It's going to be to further develop out that erupting gas. And to accomplish this, I'll have to use that HA information in a somewhat different, more radical way. With M81, I didn't have to bother removing the stars from the HA information. In fact, star removal from the high-frequency information from M81 may have been deleterious, because the star exterminator often mistakes those small, fine, pinpoint nebulosity features within other galaxies for stars. But for M82, the stars had to be removed from the image because the more radical compositing that will be required to use the HA to further bring out the erupting gases would also cause the stars to blow out. So now I'll drag in my original color, LRGB image, and the HA information. And the only thing different with the HA information this time is it's a starless version of the HA information. The stars were removed with the star exterminator. I'll begin same as before by dragging in the color image, and then I'll drag in the HA image. Now I'm going to frequency separate the HA information. On the frequency separation tool, the radius slider is pulled all the way to the right to 100 pixels. That will do a full separation, getting all the high frequency information out from the low frequency information. This time I'm just going to delete the low frequency information to simplify the layer stack. We won't need it anyway. And as noted last time, the default composite mode for the high frequency layer is linear light, and that information is now being applied to the color image in the layer below. But it's not really doing anything for the image, is it? Maybe blowing out the central structure of the galaxy a little, but that's all. The reason is the color image has already developed out the detail in the central structure of the galaxy about as much as the telescope can be pushed. So the high frequency information isn't really adding much more. But where it has potential to help us is the erupting gas, but the high frequency information with the linear light composite mode isn't doing enough. We need to see what can be accomplished with other composite modes. I'll just open up the composite mode list and go down one by one. One of the great things about layer-based photo editors is they show you live what changing the composites. In fact, they show you live what doing any editing changes will do. There's no moving a slider bar, changing a number, and then running an iteration of the change and see if you like it or not, then going back and redoing it and testing one against the other. You can see live the effects of each change, and you see me right now go down the composite mode list. And this time I've settled on the divide composite mode. Look at how it just brings that erupting gas to life. But of course, it also brings out a problem. Every benefit has its attendant problems. And the problem here is that while the divide composite does wonderfully to bring out very dim structure, it blows out brighter structure. And that was in fact why I had to separate the stars out of the high frequency information before adding it to the color information. Otherwise, each and every one of the stars in the image would likewise have been blown out. But just as with M81, we can easily mask the blown out area out of the image. And as before, I could do this by opening up a generic mask and then putting a luminosity filter within the generic mask. But it would take quite a while to tweak it and get it right, and honestly, you're not going to get any real benefit out of that. It's not like your image is going to be better because you use one tool to work on another tool. This is a great place to apply the reliable, old-fashioned but unbeaten Mark I human eyeball. So I've opened the mask, and a paintbrush set it black for erase. Set the opacity and flow both to 20 so that it'll take repeated strokes of the paintbrush to remove the brightness information. And I've set the flow to 0 so that the paintbrush is very soft and has no hard areas of transition. And I'll just repeatedly brush over the image until I've adjusted the brightness of the central structure back where I want it, which was pretty close to what it was at originally. I want the detail, the color, and the structure of the central region to show up clearly, with no harsh areas of transition. Since I'm painting on a mask, I don't have to worry about making mistakes either. If I discover an area that I feel needs a different level of opacity or flow from the brush, I can just change those qualities of the brush. And if I make a mistake and want to change something back, I can just change the color of the brush from black to white and paint over that area again, which will restore what was masked out. In about 2 to 3 minutes, I got this where I wanted. I'll just speed through that process. Okay, let's compare this to the original color image. That looks good, and the addition of the high frequency information gives us a little more structure and shape within the core. I'll develop this out further with a few more adjustments as we go along. At the top of the layer stack, I'm going to open a Levels tool. That way the Levels tool will affect all the information below it equally. And my goal is going to be to darken the space, which will likewise add some defining contrast to the central structure and the erupting gases of the cigar galaxy Messier 82. By adding 2% to the black point, I've created a threshold that light must pass in order to show up at all. That gets rid of some of the residual light from the high frequency layer. And moving up the gamma slider just a little constricts the appearance of light to brighter ranges. Now the editing here is almost done, but for aesthetic purposes, I want to get rid of one particularly tenacious flare, right here. These flares are the result of a problem that I think is unique to Schmidt-Cassegrain telescopes. They're very prone to collecting dew on the front lens called a corrector plate. I've entirely removed this problem with a 3-stage dew prevention protocol, but one of those stages is a heated dew ring attached to the outside of the corrector plate. These dew rings are very effective for keeping dew off the corrector plate, but for reasons nobody seems to be quite clear on, it can cause the light of brighter stars to flare. There's no hardware fix to this that I know of. The only fix is manual editing and development. It's easy. I'll just use Affinity Photo's in-painting brush. I can mark out the area that I want the in-painting brush to get rid of, and it will replace it seamlessly with darkness from the surrounding area. Now it's time to bring in the stars. To make the stars show through, I'll set the composite mode to screen. This time I'll take the laser away to get rid of that red overhang and just crop out the area where the additional high-frequency HA information did not fully and properly align with the color image. Now, in the HA high-frequency layer, I'll finish up by applying synergistic sharpening. Finally, I'm going to use Merge Visible again to merge everything in the layer stack into a new single pixel layer, which I'll name LRGB Pix. And since pushing developing this far can bring out any residual noise remaining in the image, I'll run the noise exterminator on the merged pixel layer. And when it's done, I'll export to PhotoLab 8 for final touches on the space, color, and sharpness. I'll use PhotoLab 8's very powerful local adjustment tools to further enhance the brightness and detail to be found within the gases erupting out of the cigar galaxy's galactic north and south. One of these days, I'm going to have to start making more videos on how to use PhotoLab 8 because it is such an incredibly powerful tool. It's not absolutely essential for developing. To me, what is essential for developing is Affinity Photo, but PhotoLab 8, used at the end of a developing workflow, has an extremely refined and powerful capability to enhance color, light and shadow, and sharpness. Its ability to select specific regions of an image to adjust, by way of hue, brightness, or region, make it very versatile. And its tools, even when operating on an entire image, have a remarkable way of working cleanly without leaving artifacts to become problems to deal with later on in developing. Right now I'm using PhotoLab 8's local adjustments, which allows me to select regions, and you can see I'm selecting the regions of the erupting gases. And I can further refine this selection by zeroing in on levels of brightness or hue. Though in this case I think the default is plenty good. It usually is actually. And I'm going to further brighten and saturate the erupting structures, and use PhotoLab 8's unique Clearview Plus and Micro Contrast tools to further enhance and distinguish the tendrils of erupting gas. Then I'm going to select the central structure of Messier 82 by creating a series of local adjustment areas right down the middle. My goal here is going to be to tone down the extreme brightness of the central region just a little bit, so I'm going to use the Luma slider to refine the selection to the brighter areas of that central region. Once I have the brighter region selected to my satisfaction, I'll go to the Selector Tone sliders and move the highlight slider down a little, till those brightest regions in the core do not look so blown out. Now I'm going to use the luminosity selection tool and select the dark space, and I'll use the slider bar to make sure I only have the space selected and none of the bright structures. Then, once again on the selected tone slider bars, this time I'll select and move the black tone slider bar down a little, which will darken the space and further refine the appearance of detail not only around Messier 82, but also around the stars and numerous galaxies which surround it. Now, there's a little lingering red that appears in the darkest regions of the image. It's residue from the red color of the high-frequency information, and it's very easy to remove. I'll just go over to the Curves tool on the light panel, select the red color, and move the bottom of the curve up 1 point, which will restrict the ability of that very low luminosity red to show through. And that leaves us with our finished image. Hopefully, YouTube reveals it with the same clarity that I can see it on my monitor. A problem with trying to convey these images on YouTube, well, it's twofold. One is that YouTube compression crushes blacks and shadows, making them look banded. And the other is that the internet is still restricted to the prehistoric sRGB color space. So even though the image looks perfect to me, on my photo development monitor, which is capable of true blacks and portrays the entire range of the display P3 color space, what you see may be a little different. Most people are using monitors that have been calibrated for either gaming or watching movies, and their ranges just are not quite as demanding. To see a more accurate and higher resolution finished version of both Messier 81 and 82 this current galaxy is showing, follow the links below in the description to the Sky Story Astrobin. Astrobin allows for the showing of much higher resolution, but like all internet sites, it's still restricted by the sRGB color space, and that is further restricted by the capabilities of your monitor. But hopefully it looks as good for you as it does for me, because right now I have this near perfect, and as far as I'm concerned, both my Messier 81 and 82 projects are complete. Thank you for watching, and I hope you found this technique useful. If you're like me, you don't like dinking around with sliders and PixInsight to find just the right mask and then figuring out just the right trick of pixel math to add one layer of information to another. I very much prefer the more straightforward and graphical approach of adding one layer's information to another to be found in layer-based photo editing. Now, you may have thought while you were watching this that it's complicated and it took some time, but it only took me a few minutes to make each image. I greatly slowed down the process to explain it. In a nutshell, just shoot your HA image, develop it as you usually would and star align it to whatever color image you're going to apply it to, and use a tool like the channel combination tool to apply a single color to the information with HA that's usually red. Then export the HA image to a layer-based photo editor, frequency separate it, and discard the low-frequency layer. Then composite the high-frequency HA information to your color image using whatever composite method works best given the nature of the image. And if you want to intensify the color of the HA high-frequency information, you can just put a saturation tool in the high-frequency HA layer or stack the HA high-frequency layers one on top of the other. Let me know if you have any thoughts, observations, or questions, and I'll answer them for you just as soon as I can. As for me, they say we're going to get a few more clear hours tonight, so I'm going out now to get the observatory ready and take advantage of them. There might be a full moon tonight, but a full moon never stops one from getting high-frequency information. And as for you, I hope you have a blast doing astrophotography. Now get out there and shoot the sky.